Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Movie Screeners Club podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Falk. The Movie Screeners Club is brought to you by Designing Hollywood Productions, in association with Gardena Cinema. If you want to win the chance to have your short film screened in a huge theater and the opportunity to be interviewed on our podcast, please submit your film today on our website, themoviescreenersclub.com. So you've got your own Twilight Time universe.
Actually, yes. No, yes.
TPU.
This is supposed to be the first of multiple stories within my own universe. And
Is it kind of like a Twilight Zone, like a Twilight Zone series idea?
yeah, kind of like that. I've always equated it to scary stories to tell in the dark or Goosebumps.
Yeah.
More Goosebumps more with the flair of scary stories where it's a little bit more like Stephen
Gritty.
King is.
Yeah, it's a little grittier.
I have a whole bandwidth of where this world comes from and all this other stuff that's very Tolkien-esque, but I'm like, I don't have the budget for that. So let's just do what we can right now. And when I'm in my 40s and I've amassed what I have, then we can be like, oh, see, he was working on it when he was younger.
Well,
So,
they say, horror is the cheapest to make, and it all you can make it for as cheap as you want, and it will still be great. And maybe
that too.
that's what's so scary about it is only having three people on set and trying to
I
figure
love
it
it.
out from there.
I honestly have just been it was the first time directing after 4 years. I'm still figuring shit out myself.
Yeah.
I'm still going to school. And so I'm just happy. And this has been a very, very lucrative year or so. This year's been let's pause, let's reflect, and let's finish semesters.
Good. Good. So are you a horror guy? Is that your genre that you just feel the most comfortable in, or are you kind of just testing it out?
Honestly, I view myself as I play with genre. I don't really stick to one or more. I do love horror. I'm a huge fan of it. It's one of on my Mount Rushmore of stories that I tend to lean towards along with sci-fi. I wanted to get into writing and storytelling mainly to write drama and mainly to write coming of age, slice of life, your before sunrise, your boyhood, your 500 that kind of stuff, the heartbeat of the soul. That's really what gets to me. And I think with oftentimes horror, what happens is my favorite horror tends to lean from filmmakers and storytellers that aren't necessarily from that genre. William Friedkin didn't view The Exorcist as though it was a horror movie, and to his extent has said it's oh, that's a documentary or something like that. And I'm that's well, I love you, bro, but come on. Or Ari Aster with Hereditary. There's those familial drama, The Shining, endlessly. We can go on. I think that there's always going to be some aspect of personal turmoil and trauma that is going to be involved in my story. So I like it all. The first one I did was a noir. It was a black and white noir. It was style. My thing is let's look what the guidelines are. Let's break it a little bit if we can, but let's make it entertaining. Let's tell a story and let's do it how I feel like I want to tell it.
Is this your first time going scary?
Yes.
So how was that? Were there any challenges kind of figuring out how to get that emotion in people?
Yeah. So the way that I wanted to kind of tackle this, the first one that I did was it was a short film in my production class. At the time, I wasn't wanting to pursue filmmaking. I was in radio. That was what my original plan of career was. Wasn't really a fan of it. I was more into voice acting. So down the line, when I eventually was kind of being just jaded with the industry, I also had plans to want to do filmmaking. But if you don't really have a lot of ends or family to go into that, it's kind of hard. And I didn't have that, but it's kind of, yeah, it's
kind of hard.
It's a mountain.
Yeah, right.
And so me and my friend, we were just he was going to Cypress, still in school while I was done with it. And he's like, hey man, let's just do it. Come on in. I'm second year production. You just come in and just we can just kind of work on it. If you don't like it, you can cut the class. And we did it. And we did it we did a very, I thought at the time something that we can be very proud of, a noir. And the film bug just hit me. Seeing
Yeah.
your film on with an audience, watching characters that you have in here, literally in front of you, like reading their lines as the actors are reading it. I'm like, that's just like, it's fun.
Yeah.
And to me, it really was a moment to me where things made sense. I've always said I'm very anal
Mhm.
when it comes to the how I want things done, my writing, my how I work, but I also love working well with people. I get that a lot with like from like I'm a barista, like that's my day job. That's what I've been doing
Mhm.
for like the past like 10 years or so. And
Yeah.
you work with a team, and in many ways you got to communicate, and that you utilize that aspect in film.
Mhm.
Um, and so to me, when I did that first one, loved it. I had so much fun, but it was an exercise based off of what we had at the time. What really spoke to me was horror and
Mhm.
something. And my thought process was like, okay, when I do my next one, that's not a student project.
Mhm.
That's from my own money and our own like thing. It's gonna be something from here. And
Mhm.
so that was why I wanted to do a horror as my first non-student film to
Right.
basically. So that
Did
was
you take did you take anything from your personal life when you were writing Twilight Time?
Yes. So the premise of it all and what like started it was that when I was a kid, I used to get sleep paralysis a
Interesting.
lot. It happens quite frequently,
Mhm.
and then it would go away, and then I would forget about it, and then years pass, and then we're going through that same experience.
Mhm.
And now we have the internet, and now we're reading up on things, and eventually I was able to figure out that these things happened when I was under very intense levels of stress,
Hmm.
and oftentimes whenever I had to deal with loss. I have had a lot of family that I've lost in the past 7 or so years, and in that time I've would have instances of that happen.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of aspects of that I included and I implemented into the story. The loss of a friend, the loss of loved ones, and right before we shot this, my aunt passed,
Mhm.
and I was dealing with that and understanding that was kind of like what really kind of infused a lot of the momentum for myself to go with when it came to the how do we deal with loss, how do we deal with all that, and how can we move forward with it. And sometimes we don't move forward,
Mhm.
and sometimes change or let
Right.
things come in.
Mhm. But that makes, the story so much more interesting, I think, when it's more human, right? It's more slice of life. It's real. Do you which part of the process do you think that you like the most? Are you kind of a big idea guy, or do you like that teamwork on set, working for, 12 hours a day, talking to your actors one on one?
I love all of it.
Mhm.
I personally really love most of it, and I think like a lot of it with the every filmmaker that we know and every artist, like it's the imagination side and the
Mhm.
very at the beginning, the pre-production one where it's our pre-production in here when we're listening to the playlist that we want to listen to, reading and watching what we want to like, oh, I like that. Let me grab that from here and
Right.
put it in the lookbook. I find that to be very therapeutic, and I enjoy that immensely. And also part of that is but the best thing that I feel like what turns it into something magical is when you're able to bring others into it.
Mhm.
And my biggest thing that I wanted to do with this one was to implement and hire talented heads of department
Mm.
and work and collaborate with them because I'm like, I can do what I can do. I'm not a cinematographer. I don't know how to work camera to an extent.
Mhm.
But like I'm like I'll hire someone that's very talented that has that vision that can work with me and can work within that. My composer John, who worked on the latter side of the short, the last one, we worked immensely on how to like work with the sound design, and he he's a maestro when it comes to what he can do. And the same
Yeah.
thing with False Figures Appearing Real, who's the composer for the majority of the short. He
Mhm.
does all of that on himself. And Hannah, the makeup artist, Hannah Koyo, she's phenomenal. I've always often said like she's really the one of the main stars of the film is because her prosthetic and her makeup talent is I couldn't have done it without her. and
Yeah.
then my actors. Erica, she's a very, very old friend of mine, and
Mhm.
I feel very confident every time I'm on set with her. So when you bring all that together, that aspect is what, and you're there physically on the set with all these people that you've been talking about for all these months, and it's like we've been talking about it. It's here. It's game day. So I love both of them. I also think there's a little bit of like put me in a corner and let's see what happens. There's always going to be
Right.
something that goes wrong.
Hmm.
Always something that happens to kind of be like, all right, we're going to light a little fire under your ass. We're going to see what happens and see how you guys work under pressure. And some of the most interesting things that I've seen on a set, whether it's mine or I'm just like happy to be there for someone else's, is like
Hmm.
when the mistakes happen, when the unforeseen things begin to unroil. So, yeah.
Right. So speaking of those kind of unforeseen challenges, was there anything that happened on this set that kind of had made you scramble for for an idea or something?
Yeah, there was quite a few. In the initial principal production for the first short,
Mm.
we had to because we used anamorphic lenses, we um we landed up not being able to shoot as wide as we wanted to shoot.
Oh,
Initially, my
interesting.
idea was to get more of like that It Follows, John Carpenter-esque,
Yeah.
hereditary wides. I
Mhm.
wanted it to be like very wide. But when we got to the point of being in there, everyone had been so busy of just trying to get everything together that we were just
Mhm.
like, my cinematographer Micah was like, all right, not gonna be able to get the shot done because we don't have as much length. It was in my room. It's in the room that we're in right now.
Yeah.
Um, so we had to pivot and we had to work around that.
Mhm.
There was instances where we had people not be able to work because certain things happen in their lives, and they're like, I had to get a new cinematographer, I had to
Mhm.
get new crew, and just things happen. And I can't think of anything aside those two that are really coming to my mind, but
Mhm.
yeah, it went as smooth as I could have hoped for.
Good.
Weirdly enough, I did have sleep paralysis the night before we shot.
Immense
Um,
stress.
no, it was weird. I remember it was around like, I don't know what time it was. I was like in a
Mhm.
haze of like, I'm awake, I'm not. And then I could hear footsteps. Like, when
Mhm.
someone walks to the room and you can feel like the weight
Yeah.
change? I could feel that. And I could hear it. And I'm just like, did my dog come in here? Did someone else? And I get up just to check. Maybe she was still like a baby at that point, so maybe she
Mhm.
needed to like, go outside. She was all the way out of the room. And
That's so freaky.
so, yeah, we had to do some cleansing of the room. Uh,
Yeah. Get some
it's
sage, burn some sage and
there were some situations involved that I will not be bringing up for
yeah.
yeah, some fun stuff happened.
Well, thank you so much, Marciel. It was so nice talking to you. Please come see Twilight Time at Gardena Cinema October 17th. It's going to be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Movie Screeners Club is produced by Designing Hollywood Productions in association with Gardena Cinema. If you want to win the chance to have your short film screened in a huge theater and the opportunity to be interviewed on our podcast, please submit your film today on our website, themoviescreenersclub.com. This episode was sponsored by Smoke Break Productions. Addictively entertaining.